Hello again, XJW Bible Bites here with another unscripted testimonial. So today, the subject I feel inclined to talk about is when and how did I really wake up to the fact that I was raised in false religion, and then later coming to the realization that I was raised in a cult. That, of course, being the Jehovah's Witness organization, the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society. When was that? So I suppose, really, as I've mentioned in some of my other testimonies, I don't think I was ever fully asleep or hypnotized or underneath their spell. This was just how I was raised. This was the only reality that I knew. And I feel like I woke up at the proper time for my life and my circumstances. But I really started to accept some of the realities of the organization at a very young age, as I saw the favoritism in the congregation that was shown to many other youths, especially elders' sons and elders' children's, uh, chillins, elders' chillins, and what they could get away with as compared to people who were not the sons of elders, not just myself, others as well. And that for me, I thought that was more of a local situation. Remember, they keep witnesses very isolated from the outside, and we only really have association with other witnesses. So I thought that was more of a local problem, specifically a problem with that congregation in particular that was extremely loosey goosey in many respects, and then did weird things in other respects that we don't need to go into great detail about. So I thought that was a localized issue, not a systematic issue with the organization, as with many things I learned later. So that helped keep me asleep, partially asleep. So I saw the failings of men in the organization, and I always use the Eli and his sons and the Samuel excuse of God will address it in his due time. These things have happened before. There have been wicked priests, um, wicked sons of high priests. Every king messed up, even the good ones. This is just something that we have to deal with. I think a lot of witnesses use that excuse. But that helped keep me from being completely taken in by the organization, completely brainwashed. Was just having that reality in front of me, undeniable. Secondly, was, I believe I've mentioned this before, there are many things where the society just doesn't give adequate or satisfactory enough answers, particularly to someone like myself in many respects, and it drove me to outside research. Now, the interesting thing was two things I was not aware of. Witnesses are not supposed to do outside research, but I didn't understand the level to which that was actually taken. Was that you could be considered an apostate just for doing that, depending on congregation to congregation. In my local area, it was not so strict. Many people in the congregation on a Jehovah's Witness level, I'll say, not tooting my own horn, I've had to relearn my whole theology. They kind of considered me either an egghead or a very scholarly, professorly kind of person, and it was kind of generally acknowledged that I research all kinds of things, but I never detracted from the society, and I never openly opposed anything that came down as spiritual junk food from the governing body, so it was never raised as an issue. Maybe I was put on apostate watch for some of the things I happened to mention in the ministry. I don't know. But it never really turned into an issue. But back on topic, I would do all kinds of research, and I came to realize the society's interpretation is either severely lacking or they're just simply wrong about things in the Bible. But I let it go for that because I excused it in my mind of this organization is the only organization of its kind. We're doing our best. We're doing the global preaching campaign that they use Matthew 24:14 to I think it's 20. I think that's it off the top of my head, to justify this good news we preach to all the inhabited nations, and the end will come. Verse, I thought that's the most important thing. We don't have to have all the theological details correct. The issue is the society doesn't act that way. You have to believe everything they said is the Word of God, despite giving themselves the out of they're not inspired, in their own words, in their own broadcast, and in the testimony before the Australian Commission, where Jackson states directly and simply that it would be presumptuous to say they were God's only channel. But what they say and what they expect are two completely different things. The thing was, I was perfectly willing to dismiss the little things they got wrong. So for me, I learned that there are many individuals and organizations outside of the Watchtower Society that made really strong theological arguments, that made really bad theological arguments, from my perspective, at least, and really did their research on a lot of things. And in my mind, I compartmentalized the Society's focus, the Watchtower Society's focus, is the ministry. And that was how I justified it. But I knew that there were other good people out there, which is another thing. In my heart, I never accepted the doctrine of everyone but witnesses will be destroyed because of what I knew of God. I knew that was neither loving, nor just, nor wise. It would be an expression of power, but not of the other cardinal attributes, so I knew that wasn't true. And I just kind of ignored that doctrine for a while. One thing I'd actually forgotten about, besides not being or supposed to do outside research in scriptural matters, I had either probably forgotten, or was never taught, at least I don't recall, that we were not supposed to use just the Bible in the ministry. I actually spent a very long time just using their silver Bible with the front section in there for scriptural references in the ministry. And as far as door to door, being able to share things with people, I didn't really have success, but in a relative sense, I had more success in the ministry. But I thought it was strange when I learned that witnesses are not supposed to just use the Bible for studies, that none of the elders ever mentioned anything to me. None of the other people, pioneers, sisters, other servants, never mentioned this to me, even though they saw me doing it out in the ministry. And I don't know if it was brought up in secret and I was put on some kind of list. I don't know. Or if it's just my region happened to be more laid back and not as insane and corrupt as some of the stories and testimonies I've been hearing, for which I'm thankful. But I guess the last few years really started to shake my conviction and my faith in the organization. But I had a really jarring moment at my work, and it was with the brother that I subcontracted to for my primary contract. And I was trying to bring up some things that I had learned about a particular very controversial matter, and the response that he posed to me was, if the governing body hasn't said this or hasn't affirmed this, or if the governing body has not come out against this, then we shouldn't be concerned. And then he asked me a question where all the gears in my head kind of ground to a halt when he asked me, is like, don't you trust the governing body? And I'm sitting there, and my mind is going as fast as possible, and I realized, no, I don't. And I quickly, knowing what I did know of the accusations of apostasy and everything, I very quickly flubbed together a response. How did I put it? I deflected the question in classic witness way, and I said, I think maybe they don't have all the information, or that they may be misinformed. Yeah, that's essentially, in that conversation, that's how I put it, I think. But that was the light bulb moment for me of, no, I don't trust them in this regard. And I really have no reason to, based off of my own knowledge of the scriptures, my ability to think, to reason, and to test things according to the Spirit. No, I don't. Of course, you can't say that. And I knew enough back then to know you can't say that, even if you feel that. And that was really, over the next couple months, things really started snowballing. And every update they would do, every video they would put out, every new article on the org that they would put out, I was hoping that the trumpet would change, so to speak, in a figurative way. I was hoping that they would turn it around and we would start standing up for the preaching work, and for, if we're really in the tribulation, if we're really in the time of the end, why are we dialing back, what we're doing? And I was really hoping that, this was going to be it. This is where we're going to have to make our stand. We're going to have to face persecution in this country like so many other brothers and sisters have, and it never came. They always kowtowed to these governments that are under the principalities, and that really bothered me continuously until I finally fully woke up when I learned about the United Nations thing, and that really led me down the rabbit hole of opening the floodgates, of no longer ignoring what witnesses would call apostate lies, even if they don't come from anyone who has ever been a witness, has ever really associated with witnesses, or has never studied with witnesses. And I was like, how is that apostate? Even by their incorrect definition of biblical apostasy, how is it an apostate if they've literally never had any interactions or oaths to the society and having been in it? It's literally not. But you get that cognitive dissonance, and now I'm just thinking, many people are hanging on either because of their families and they're afraid of losing their community and everything that they know, or what was the other thing I was considering? Accepting that you've been serving a lie and that you were in a cult for years or decades is kind of a hard pill to swallow. I know it was for me. That was a very rough week. For me, it only took a day to realize the reality about the Watchtower Society. Once I found out about the UN thing, the spiritual adultery, cut and dry, according to their own doctrine, black and white, binary 0 and 1, yes and no, for me anyway. And then at that point, it was just a matter of confirming and reconfirming everything else, like the CSA scandals and everything like that. So that was a rough week. But yeah, so when did I realize it was false religion? Started when I realized I didn't trust the governing body in this respect, and then when I found out about the UN NGO affiliation, that they not only did for no theocratic reason, but then lied about the reasons for, instead of just apologizing. They made excuses, they passed the buck. Adam, Eve, Saul, tale as old as time. So, yeah, when I realized it was a cult was after listening to Watchtower, Examiner, and many of the other such channels for a long time, and then doing more studies into the techniques that the Watchtower uses, going down the rabbit hole pretty deep into things, and yeah. Eventually I came to realize it was even more than just false religion. Is they're not even a Christian religion. It's a cult. And it was such a weird feeling to realize that you've been raised in a cult. And it still hits me sometimes. I don't need much ex-witness material anymore as far as disproving Watchtower doctrines. I still try to keep up with what's happening and check out reviews of the latest broadcasts or updates and certain legal proceedings and things. But as far as like doctrine and the history of the organization, I'm all done with that. I don't need it anymore. And I get anxiety hearing the voices of these guys that I grew up with. I don't like hearing it. It brings back too many now bad memories and everything. And I just want to say to anyone who's in the process of waking up, whose PMO is, you are absolutely not alone. Besides myself, I can't even keep track of how many relatively new XJW channels, whether they call themselves that or not, that are popping up all over YouTube in the last few months, few weeks. Is I just hope that they're done soon. I don't think, just like the blood issue, they're not going to be able to go back on the things that they've done over the last 2 years. And this could be the end for them. I think that's why there's been such a heavy focus on the youth of late. On the media center, they're trying to rebrand themselves. And they like to pretend that they're ahead of a lot of other organizations, but they're really behind in technology and methodology and stuff. But they're trying to rebrand, become a media company. I have to believe they see the writing on the wall. It's one of the theories that I'm interested in is the governing body gonna, make a cash grab and leave? Because they've been talking about how they've been training men to take over for when the tribulation starts, and they're called up to heaven to fight in that extremely cringy part that was given by Token. And shout out for those of you who get that reference. And yeah, I'm just wondering if they're planning on disappearing at some point if they see that time's running out, because they have access to the real numbers. They manipulate their numbers the same way the government manipulates their numbers, and they're just not accurate. And even if you do the math, you can see the growth rates. It's just not there. I thought it was just a local thing, For me, the apathy and everything, I thought it was just a local thing to our area. And no, this is a global thing in countries with widespread internet access. The only place they really have growth is in areas where there's very limited access, or there's certain cultural advantages that they might have. For example, in Africa, there's a lot of cultural stigma in regions around disrespecting a man of God, um, that kind of thing. So, yeah, I was never fully asleep, but when I fully woke up was when I was asked, "Do you trust the governing body?" And I realized I was unable to answer a yes without knowing that it was a lie. So that's my testimonial for the day, and I hope you all have a good night. Next video that should be coming out, I believe, is going to be consideration of some aspects of 1 Samuel 16, and possibly another testimonial. But, alright, I hope you all have a good night.